They came out of the dark like ghosts, their ships blotting out the stars, sleek, silent, bristling with power. The Galactic Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds, burned civilizations to ash, and enslaved species that dared to resist. But when they reached Earth, they hesitated. Not because of fear. Arrogance ran deep in the Empire's blood. No, they paused because Earth looked primitive, barely united, still struggling with internal wars and environmental collapse. A perfect target. Easy pickings. The initial assault was swift. They hit the satellites first, blinding Earth's eyes. Then the power grids, the internet, global communications. Cities went dark. Panic spread like wildfire. Then came the dropships, unholy machines that split the skies and vomited out armored warriors. The Empire expected chaos. They didn't expect coordinated resistance. Within hours, guerrilla units were hitting back. Not governments, not armies. People. Farmers with old rifles, teenagers using drones, retired engineers building EMP weapons from scrap. The invaders laughed at first, until their walkers started falling. Their scouts vanished, and their supply ships never returned. And then came the first real message from Earth, broadcasted across all frequencies in 27 languages. This is not war, this is home defense, and we haven't even gotten serious yet. High command of the Empire didn't take it seriously. Just propaganda, they thought. A desperate bluff. So they deployed Phase 2, orbital bombardment. They'd done it to other planets, glass the surface, rebuild later. Only it didn't work. Somehow, the nukes and plasma bombs were intercepted mid-air by Earth's own satellites, now hacked and weaponized by civilian tech experts. The atmosphere lit up with brilliant flashes as the sky turned into a battlefield. Something wasn't right. In orbit, Admiral Vralix paced the deck of the dreadnought Ardent Flame. A Zenthari bred for command, his species had ruled empires long before this one. His 6 eyes blinked in tight sequence as he reviewed the latest intel. Earth should have fallen by now. Resources depleted, population panicked, resistance futile. But instead, Earth was fighting back harder than any race they'd ever encountered. A lieutenant approached, scales pale with nervous energy. Admiral, the forward fleet reports total loss. 80% of ground troops wiped. Remaining units surrounded. They're asking for extraction. From a single continent? Vralix hissed. The officer hesitated. No, sir. From 6. He turned, his voice a low growl. How many humans are we dealing with? We estimated global organized militia forces to be under 20 million. Yes, sir. That's what we thought. What are the new numbers? The lieutenant's voice shook. Over 900 million confirmed combatants, possibly more. Sir, it seems civilians are fighting. Children, elders, untrained yet coordinated. They're adapting faster than we can respond. Silence filled the command deck. Vralix clenched his claws behind his back. His translator struggled for a moment as his native tongue clicked and hissed in low syllables. And the footage? The officer nodded, bringing up the screen. It played raw feeds from body cams, human fighters ambushing drop squads with home-built explosives, city streets turned into traps, swarms of tiny quadcopters disabling tank systems, wild-eyed resistance fighters laughing as they blew holes through elite Empire troops with scavenged tech. But one clip stopped them cold. A human commander, face bloodied, stood before a captured Empire general. She leaned close, whispering, "You think this is our army?" "Number, this is just us being angry. You haven't even seen our military." And then she let the general live, sent him back up in a stolen dropship with a tracking beacon buried in his armor. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. The general's dropship limped back into orbit, smoke trailing from its undercarriage as emergency protocols guided it to the docking bay of the Ardent Flame. Medics rushed forward, but the general staggered out on his own, his face pale, movements stiff, and a haunted look in his 4 eyes. Admiral Vrelix watched in silence. "What did you see?" he finally asked. The general swallowed hard. "Everything we feared. And more." The admiral motioned toward the medical officers, dismissing them. He wanted no distractions. "You were captured. You returned. Explain." The general's voice cracked. "They could have killed me, easily. Instead, they showed me something. Deliberately. They wanted me to come back." "What did they show you?" The general raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the viewport that overlooked the blue and green world below. "Not an army, a mindset. They don't fight like we do. No ranks, no chain of command. They fight like it's personal, like every human is a general, a soldier, and a weapon all at once." Vrelix's eyes narrowed. "That's chaos." "No, sir," the general whispered. "That's what they want us to think." He reached into his uniform and dropped a human-made tablet on the table. It flickered to life, playing a video in broken Galactic standard. A woman stood before a makeshift war map drawn on a cafe chalkboard. Civilians, some barely out of school, some in wheelchairs, listened closely. Her words were simple. "They thought taking out our armies would break us. But they forgot one thing. We don't need orders to protect what's ours." Admiral Vrelix turned away, silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "They're not an empire. They're a wildfire." Elsewhere, on the surface of Earth, in the ruins of what used to be Geneva, a squad of Empire enforcers crouched in a crumbling museum, waiting for extraction. Their commander, a young but promising officer named Uthran, held his plasma rifle tight. His squad had been ambushed 3 times in the last 2 hours, once by a 12-year-old on a bicycle who dropped a grenade in their path, and again by an old woman who'd lured them into a church, then collapsed the roof with explosives hidden under hymnals. He'd never seen anything like it. And now, in the dim light, he saw movement, shapes in the fog, human silhouettes, moving fast, too fast. "They're here!" Uthran barked. "Defensive formation!" But it was already too late. The walls burst inward. Smoke grenades hissed. Blinding lights and thunderous shouts disoriented the troops. And then they were on them. Humans, wearing patched armor and wielding weapons clearly made in garages and basements. Yet they moved with precision, like they had done this their whole lives. Uthran fired blindly. One of his shots clipped a human in the shoulder. The man didn't even flinch. He dove at Uthran, tackled him to the ground, and jammed a combat knife made from recycled steel against his throat. The human leaned close, face smeared with ash and sweat. "Thought you broke us? We build under pressure?" Uthran stared up, breathing hard. "You're not military?" The man laughed. "Military? That's cute." He stood and let him go. "I fix cars for a living. Or did, before you bastards blew up my shop." Then the man turned to the others. "Move out. Leave the wounded. We're not executioners." Uthran watched them vanish into the smoke, dragging their wounded with them, leaving nothing but broken pride and silence. Later that night, Uthran would transmit a message to command, a single line. "If what we've seen isn't their army, then may the stars have mercy when it does arrive." The Empire had always believed in overwhelming force. Crush resistance early, and the rest would kneel. But Earth didn't kneel. It bared its teeth and bit back harder. And now, deep within the heart of the Pacific Ocean, something stirred. Not resistance fighters. Not civilians. Something else. Something trained. It began with silence. An absence of signal picked up by an Empire surveillance satellite. A dead zone where there should have been radio chatter, radar pings, movement. Then the silence exploded. A burst of encrypted comms from underwater, followed by dozens of heat signatures breaching the surface. Submarines. Dozens. Sleek, dark, and deadly. They weren't civilian ships. They weren't government-issued either. They were ghosts. Back on the ardent flame, Admiral Vralix stood before a projection of Earth's oceanic data. New contacts blinked into existence every minute. Ships surfacing where none had been detected. Transports, drones, aircraft, not part of any known Earth Navy. "What faction is this?" he growled. "Another country?" The analyst beside him shook his head. "No known nation claims them. They use no flags, no identifiers, but they're armed. Advanced technology cybernetically enhanced suits. They're deploying deep-sea artillery platforms. And, sir, they've taken out 3 of our orbital communication relays in the last 5 minutes." "Impossible," Vralix muttered. "We swept the oceans." "You missed the bottom, sir," the analyst said quietly. "Humans didn't hide their army in bunkers or bases. They buried it under the sea. Below, near the Mariana Trench, a massive platform rose from the depths, jet black, plated in a strange mix of steel and titanium alloys, covered in barnacles and scars. It was old, but alive. Its engines lit up, casting a dull blue glow in the abyss. Inside, men and women strapped into exosuits. Their armor wasn't flashy. It was brutal, practical. Their faces were marked, not with medals, but with loss. These were the ones who trained in silence, who waited for a day they hoped would never come. Commander Elira Vance stood at the heart of the operation. Once a naval officer, now the leader of Earth's unofficial last line, a military force built off the books, funded in secret, trained without limits. When the world governments failed, they prepared. And now, it was time. She looked at the feeds from the surface, cities burning, civilians fighting with kitchen knives and Molotovs. "They weren't supposed to carry the weight," she said softly. "They weren't supposed to be the first line. That was us." A younger officer nodded. "Then let's take it back, Commander." Elira smiled grimly. "Deploy everything. Full blackout. No warnings, no mercy." The first move came in the sky. High above Europe, 3 Empire carriers hovered like predatory beasts, deploying reinforcements. They didn't see the stealth drones until it was too late. Human-engineered, hyper-fast, silent as death, the drones pierced the ship's underbellies and detonated inside their engine cores. In 30 seconds, 3 carriers became fireballs. Then came the silent rain. Kinetic rods dropped from orbit by the rogue platform, fast enough to punch through ship armor like paper. Empire vessels began dropping from the sky like wounded birds. The humans weren't fighting anymore. They were hunting. In a jungle in South America, a platoon of Empire troops was ambushed, not by scattered rebels this time, but by coordinated strike teams. Exosuits blurred between the trees, executing clean, silent kills. One trooper managed to escape, only to trip a tripwire that activated a net made of carbon thread wire. He was pinned, struggling, as a figure stepped from the shadows. Black armor, unmarked, rifle aimed. The voice from the helmet was cold. "Your war just changed." And then, silence again. In the Imperial War Council aboard the flagship orbiting further out, panic set in. Reports were pouring in too fast to track. Empire commanders were being hunted, ships destroyed mid-flight, bases razed overnight. One captain screamed across a broken comm line, "They weren't hiding their army. They were training it where we weren't looking, underwater, underground, in space. They let their civilians bleed just to bait us into a false win." Then static. Admiral Vralix stood motionless. So Earth had a real army, and it hadn't shown up until now. They thought they'd already faced the worst. They were wrong. This was the warm-up. Across the void of space, the Empire's communication networks were in chaos. Messages overlapped, corrupted, or never arrived at all. High Command ships found themselves isolated, orbiting above a planet that had suddenly stopped playing by the rules. Earth had been unpredictable from the beginning. But this was something else. This was surgical, calculated destruction. Admiral Vrelix stood at the center of the war chamber, surrounded by his top strategists, the air thick with fear masked as formality. One of the senior tacticians, a grizzled Noxari with implants from 20 campaigns, slammed a datapad down on the table. "We've lost 53 ships in 20 hours. Our forward bases are dust. Our drones are being hijacked mid-air. This isn't guerrilla warfare anymore. This is an organized military force." Vrelix didn't respond. His eyes were locked on a holomap of Earth. Red markers were vanishing by the second. Each blip was a destroyed unit, a fallen ship, a shattered battalion. "What are these new units, these black-armored soldiers?" another commander asked. "We have no data on their command structure, no emblems, no insignia." "They don't want to be known," Vrelix muttered. "They want us to guess." Below, Earth's underground networks were lighting up. The last line's full force had mobilized. Strike teams hit Empire weapon convoys, intel bases, and drone hubs with terrifying precision. They left nothing behind. No survivors, no signals, only messages, carved into walls, etched into helmets, painted in blood. This was just our warning. In a battered farmhouse outside of Warsaw, 2 resistance leaders met with a figure from the last line. He wore the same black armor, but his helmet was off, revealing a human face, older, weathered but sharp. Commander Jace Nolan. He dropped a hollow drive on the table. "Intel says they've got a planetary weapon, something big, deep in orbit, a city buster. They call it the Judgment Ray." One of the resistance leaders, a woman with burn scars across her jaw, leaned forward. "What's the plan?" Jace smirked. "We take it." She blinked. "You're serious?" "We didn't come up from the bottom of the ocean to play defense. This war ends in orbit. We're going up." In low Earth orbit, the Judgment Ray spun slowly, its lens panels unfolding like petals of death. Its core glowed a sickly red. One shot could vaporize an entire region. It was the Empire's trump card. Inside, the Imperial crew prepared for activation. The countdown had begun. Then something unexpected happened. Alarms blared, external hull breach, systems failure, internal gravity loss. Explosions tore through the control room before anyone could even reach the override console. Human operatives, 8 of them, burst through a maintenance shaft, moving like shadows, planting charges, cutting wires, disabling everything with ruthless efficiency. A terrified Imperial tech officer backed into a corner, watching one of the black-armored figures approach. "How did you even get up here?" he cried. "We control orbit." The human paused, looked him straight in the eye through the visor, and said, "You did." They left nothing functional. The Judgment Ray exploded into flaming debris, scattering across the upper atmosphere like burning confetti. From his command deck, Admiral Vrelix watched the explosion through the viewport. It was visible even from his distance. He felt a coldness settle in his bones. That weapon was their fallback, their leverage. Gone. "Send the call," he said slowly. A lieutenant turned. "Sir?" Vrelix's voice dropped an octave. "Evacuate secondary fleets. Fortify the homeworld. Send word to the Empress." "You mean, surrender?" "No," Vrelix growled. "I mean, this isn't a conquest anymore. It's a war for survival." Down on Earth, the black-armored soldiers regrouped. In the silence of a bunker beneath Siberia, Commander Elira Vance debriefed her teams. Everyone was bruised, exhausted, but alive. She looked at her people. Most weren't military anymore. They were scientists, athletes, engineers, mechanics, ex-Marines, all volunteers, all driven by something deeper than duty. "You've done more in a week than any army has in a year," she said, "but we're not done." "Then what's next?" someone asked. Elira turned to the live satellite feed. Imperial ships, once dominating the skies, were now retreating, pulling back, realigning. She narrowed her eyes. "They're calling for reinforcements," she said, "which means they're afraid." A pause. "And fear?" That's the first crack. The stars had always seemed unreachable for most of humanity, distant, mysterious, untouchable. But now they looked different. The skies weren't just filled with stars anymore. They were littered with the remains of warships, burning debris streaking across the night like meteor showers. Children in war-torn cities watched them fall and whispered wishes on the trails of fire. But Earth wasn't making wishes anymore. Earth was making moves. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity took the offensive beyond its atmosphere. On the far side of the moon, hidden in the shadowed craters where no telescope from Earth could see, lay Outpost Perseus. It had started as a secret research station funded by a coalition of off-the-books science divisions from several nations. Long disbanded governments, now just memories in ash. But the outpost lived on, expanding slowly, feeding on rumors and fear. And now, it became the launch pad of Earth's first counterstrike into deep space. Inside the hangars, black-hulled strike ships hummed with power. Not graceful like the Empire's vessels. No, these were brutalist masterpieces, jagged with armor, retrofitted with stolen alien tech, and fueled by Earth's unstoppable instinct to survive. Commander Elira Vance stood before the fleet with a grim smile. "Today we don't wait," she said into the comms. "Today we bring the fire to their front porch." The response was one unified thrum, engines flaring, weapons locked, soldiers buckled in. And then they launched. Back aboard the Ardent Flame, Admiral Vralix paced. The news had gone from bad to worse. Imperial reinforcements were still a week away, and Earth had gone quiet. Too quiet. That kind of silence meant planning. He knew it. "We've underestimated them," he muttered, staring out at the burning edge of Earth. "We made them fight like us. They learned." He was still speaking when the first strike hit. Not on Earth. On one of the Empire's outposts, Zarkon 4, a mineral-rich planet 2 systems away, long thought untouchable. The humans didn't invade. They erased it, hit the power grid, crashed the orbital controls, nuked the command center. By the time Vralix got the report, Zarkon IV was gone. And then came the broadcast. It played on every Imperial ship within 10 light-years. A woman's voice, calm, controlled. "This is Earth. You came to us with fire. Now we bring the storm. For every child buried in rubble, for every city burned, for every scream you ignored, we will burn 10 of yours. This isn't defense anymore. This is debt collection." Within a week, 4 more fringe colonies were attacked. No survivors, no ships left behind, just wreckage and a signature. The mark of the last line, a jagged E carved into the ruins. Earth. Meanwhile, aboard one of the strike ships heading into deep space, Sergeant Theo Ramos stared at the empty void ahead. He was once a firefighter in Boston. His wife and daughter had died in the first wave. He hadn't spoken much since. Now he was a gunner. "You ready?" his commander asked. Theo didn't answer at first. Then he muttered, "They thought we were just scared animals." The commander nodded. They forgot that cornered animals bite hardest. Their ship broke warp speed, heading straight for an Empire fuel station the size of a small moon. No backup, no retreat, just revenge. Back in orbit, Empire morale was crumbling. Lower ranks questioned orders. Officers reported mass desertions. Whole battalions were disappearing, some defecting, others just vanishing. And deep inside the ardent flame, Admiral Vralix stood alone before a massive screen. On it, a looping message from Earth played again and again. "You mean that wasn't their full army?" He replayed it. Again. And again. He finally understood. It was never about numbers. It was about will. And Earth's will was endless. The Empire's homeworld, Zorith Prime, was the crown jewel of their dominion. A sprawling city planet of towering spires, atmospheric shields, and glowing highways that stretched across continents. It had never been touched by war, never seen the horror of invasion. For millennia, it was untouchable, a monument to superiority. Until now. In the black vacuum just beyond its security perimeter, a tear in space shimmered. Then it widened, cracked like glass, and opened into a tunnel of chaos. Earth's strike fleet burst through, ships cobbled together with rage and ingenuity, engines screaming, weapons primed. The last line had arrived. And they weren't here to negotiate. On Zorith Prime, sirens wailed. For the first time in recorded history, the planetary defense grid activated. Civilians panicked. Holograms of reassurance flickered over the city, broadcasting that everything was under control. But behind the scenes, the Imperial High Council was in freefall. "The humans are here? Here!" one counselor shouted, slamming a clawed hand against the war table. "That's 2 systems beyond their capacity." Another muttered, "They must have stolen FTL tech. That's the only explanation." Admiral Vralix appeared on the holoprojector, his face grim and older somehow, like the last few weeks had dragged centuries out of him. "They didn't steal anything," he said. "They earned it." Down on the planet's surface, chaos bloomed. Evac shuttles tried to launch. Anti-air defenses lit the sky, but nothing prepared them for what landed in the center of their capital, a black meteor, sleek and pulsing with light, crashing into the Emperor's square. It wasn't a weapon. It was a drop pod. The doors hissed open. Out stepped Earth's elite. Commander Elira Vance led the charge, flanked by soldiers with no names and no fear. They moved with perfect silence, through smoke and fire, toward the heart of an empire that had once laughed at the idea of Earth resistance. Now, they weren't laughing. Now, they were screaming. In a marble-walled chamber atop the spire of Dominion, the Empress of the Empire stood watching the footage unfold. She had never imagined this moment. No one had. Earth had been seen as primitive, petty, divided. But something had shifted. She turned to her advisors. "What are we looking at?" A trembling aide replied. "Tactical deployment of rogue specialists, coordinated orbital bombardments, cyber warfare disruption across our systems. They're treating this as retribution." The Empress narrowed her eyes. "How many?" "We estimate less than 300 entered the capital. But ma'am, they've already brought down 2 defense towers and hijacked our command grid." She went quiet. 300 humans were bringing an empire to its knees. In the wreckage of the Imperial Ministry, Elira moved through halls of shattered glass and fire-scorched banners. They weren't targeting civilians. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to humiliate, to leave a message so loud that every star system would hear it echo for generations. Elira planted a device on the central broadcast node. Her voice spread across the Empire's systems, hijacking every screen, every comm, every corner of their digital empire. "You took our world for a soft target. You killed our people thinking we'd die quiet. You were wrong. You thought our resistance was chaos. It was strategy. You thought our pain was weakness. It was fuel. This isn't a victory speech. This is a promise. You will never forget Earth." Then the signal cut, and the planetary AI went dark, Admiral Vralix sat alone in the ruins of the orbital command center, breathing in the smoke of his empire's fall. He had underestimated them at every turn, and now he understood why they never sent their full army first. Because humans didn't need one. Every farmer, every mechanic, every grieving parent, that was their army. And the ones who came next? They were the Reapers. The smoke rising from the capital of Zorith Prime painted the skies in shades of shame. For the first time in generations, the Empire's throne world, once considered the heart of order and power, bled. Its streets, lined with marble and gold, were reduced to scorched concrete and shattered glass. Its towering monuments to conquest lay crumbled, their polished surfaces now cracked, smeared with ash and fury. From the roof of the former Ministry of Galactic Policy, Commander Elira Vance stood tall. Her armor bore the grime of war, the carbon scoring of near-death strikes, but her posture was unshaken. Behind her, dozens of Earth's finest lined the edge of the rooftop, looking down at a trembling city that had never known fear until now. Elira activated her comms. "Status." "Targets neutralized," came a voice from her left. Sergeant Theo Ramos, face partially hidden behind a visor. "Broadcast towers disabled. Local defense net offline. The people are unarmed. Orders?" She turned her gaze towards the horizon, where Empire citizens, hundreds of thousands of them, were gathered in the city's central plaza. Some clutched children, some wept. Others looked up, angry, confused, terrified. They had always believed they were the superior race, the chosen rulers of the stars. Their propaganda had never prepared them for this, for humans to stand over them. "No more bombs," Elira said. "No more blood. Let them feel what it's like to listen." She nodded to a tech behind her. The screen mounted on the central spire crackled to life again. This time there were no threats, no battle cries, just the image of Earth, a slowly rotating blue and green sphere, followed by the faces of the dead. Civilians, children, medics, grandmothers, soldiers. Their photos faded one by one as the camera panned to Elira. She stepped forward and spoke not like a conqueror, but as a survivor. "You don't know our names, but you killed us anyway. You didn't ask questions. You just landed and started taking, burning, laughing." She paused, letting her words settle in the ears of every Zorithian watching. "We were doctors, artists, students. We raised crops, fixed roads, laughed with our kids. We weren't your enemies. But now we are." Her voice dropped into a cold, sharp edge. "Because you made us one." The camera zoomed out slightly, showing the black-armored soldiers standing still, watching over a crowd that could rise up at any moment. But didn't. They were listening. "Your empire fell the moment you stopped seeing us as people, and now we return the favor. We are not here to rule. We're not here to enslave. We came to show you what happens when you push a species to its breaking point." Elira took off her helmet. Her face was tired. Her eyes carried the weight of 1,000 funerals. "We are Earth, and we don't forgive. But maybe, just maybe, we'll let you learn." The screen went dark. Below, the murmuring began. The Empire's citizens weren't sure what to feel. Anger? Shame? Guilt? The lies they'd been fed from birth, that Earth was savage, that humans were a failed experiment, crumbled in real time. They had seen the images, the ruins of human cities, the craters, the corpses. Some knelt, some cried, some turned their backs in silence, and some, for the first time, questioned. In the Imperial Council's underground bunker, one of the few places still untouched by war, the Empress sat in silence. Her most loyal guards were dead, her aides gone. She was alone, surrounded by relics of her ancestors, portraits of conquerors, statues of tyrants, all meaningless now. The door hissed open. Admiral Vralix stepped in, blood on his uniform, no escort behind him. He didn't kneel. "They've won," he said simply. The Empress's lip curled. "They're savages." "They're survivors," Vralix corrected, "and we were fools." He dropped something at her feet. A small glass case. Inside it was a single bullet, primitive, outdated by any standard. But engraved on it were the names of 50 children, found in the ruins of a human school. "That's what they fought with," Vralix said, turning to leave. "That's what beat us." She didn't answer. She couldn't. She knew it was over. Back outside, the human fleet began its slow retreat. They didn't stay. They didn't demand tribute or territory. They'd proven their point. Earth wasn't prey. Earth was patient wrath. As the dropships ascended, Elira stood at the edge of the roof one last time. Theo approached her. "You think they'll change?" She sighed. Not all of them. Some will try, most won't. But now they know." Theo looked up at the stars. "So, what now?" She smiled faintly. "Now we go home. And rebuild." And with that, Earth's army disappeared into the stars once more, not as conquerors, but as the warning written in fire across a tyrant's sky. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Not silent. Engines still hummed, and systems still beeped. But there was a stillness inside every ship that couldn't be touched by sound. The soldiers didn't celebrate. There were no victory chants, no toasts, just heavy breaths and the weight of what they had done. Commander Elira Vance sat alone in the command pod, staring at the data logs from Zorith Prime. Not battle stats, not casualties, just footage of civilians looking up in silence, of children hiding behind ruined statues, of a population that had, for the first time, been shown what their empire had truly become. There was satisfaction in their success, but no joy. Earth had won, but not without scarring itself in the process. She tapped the console, replaying the footage of her own speech, her voice echoing back at her. "We are Earth, and we don't forgive." She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "But maybe we should have." 2 weeks later, the first ship re-entered Earth's atmosphere, slicing through clouds over the Atlantic Ocean. It wasn't met with a parade, no confetti, no brass band, just people, thousands of them waiting at makeshift landing zones, watching with sunburnt eyes and hearts caught between pride and grief. When Elira stepped off the transport in what used to be southern France, the crowd didn't cheer. They parted. Slowly, quietly, like they were afraid she might shatter. She didn't speak. She just nodded and walked straight through them. In the crowd, someone whispered, "That's the one who burned the Empire." Another whispered back, "That's the one who saved us." Across the planet, rebuilding had already begun. Not with governments, not yet. They were still too fractured. But communities had risen in their place. Farmers planted in scorched soil, teachers set up blackboards in tents, engineers fixed water lines with scraps. In South America, Sergeant Theo Ramos returned to the ruins of his home. His street was gone. The fire had left nothing but bone and ash. But he found the spot where his daughter's swing used to hang. He planted a sapling there. Just a tiny thing with half-dead leaves. But it stood. That was enough. He didn't cry. He hadn't since the invasion began. But he stood there for hours. In New Nairobi, a child played with a model of an Empire ship made from scrap metal. He threw it against a stone wall, laughed when it shattered, and shouted to no one in particular, "We're Earth. We don't lose." An older man, sitting nearby, said gently, "We don't hate either." The child paused. Didn't understand. Not yet. But maybe someday. Far above Earth, in what used to be an abandoned orbital station, the remnants of the last line met one last time. Elira stood at the center of a long metal hall, her armor finally off, revealing the deep circles under her eyes and the faded bruises beneath her jaw. 100 operatives surrounded her. Each one had fought across planets. Each had lost something. Each had seen what the Empire truly was. And now? Now they had to decide what came next. "This isn't a command," Elira said quietly. "It's an invitation. You've all given more than any soldier ever should. You don't owe Earth a damn thing." She looked at them. "But if you want to stay, help build something real, help teach the next ones how to fight without becoming like the Empire, we'll need you." No one moved at first. Then Theo stepped forward. "I'll stay," he said. "I've seen what we're capable of when we're cornered. I want to see what we can do when we're free." One by one, the others joined him. Not because they had to, because they chose to. And in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, where the Empire's shattered fleets limped to hidden bases, a new truth began to whisper through the stars. Humans weren't weak. They weren't fractured. They weren't prey. They were a storm that rose from the ashes of arrogance. They were a warning to any empire that believed war could be won with arrogance and numbers alone. And etched into the hull of every last-line ship, in a language older than any empire, was a simple phrase. "You mean that wasn't their full army?" The galaxy would never forget that line. Because it wasn't just a question, it was a promise, a threat, and a truth. Earth had never needed a full army, just enough rage to stand, and the will to finish what was started. Admiral Jiang Wei stood at the bridge of the ESS Defiant, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the holographic display before her. The Crixian ultimatum still hung in the air, its arrogant words echoing in her mind. "Submit or be eradicated. You have one solar rotation to decide." The corner of her mouth twitched upward in a slight smile. In their 300 years of interstellar conquest, the Crixians had never encountered a species quite like humanity. They didn't understand what made humans different. They couldn't comprehend why, after subjugating 37 civilizations, this insignificant species from a backwater arm of the galaxy dared to refuse their demands. "Admiral," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, his fingers dancing across the neural interface of his station. "The Crixian fleet is moving into attack formation. 800 capital ships, at least twice that many support vessels." Zhang nodded, unsurprised. The Crixians never were ones for patience or subtlety. "And our status?" "Operation Trojan Horse is ready, sir. All civilian ships have been evacuated from the Sol system. The lunar defense grid is powered up but running in passive mode, just as you ordered. And..." Rodriguez paused, double-checking his readings. "The quantum entanglement network is showing green across all nodes." The Admiral allowed herself a broader smile this time. The Crixians, for all their technological advancement, had one critical weakness: their absolute confidence in their superiority. They believed their quantum-encrypted communications were unbreakable. They never considered that humanity had not only cracked their encryption 2 years ago, but had been feeding them carefully crafted misinformation ever since. "Signal the fleet," Zhang commanded. "Execute Phase 1. Across the solar system, 300 human warships winked out of existence as their quantum stealth systems engaged. To the Crixian sensors, it would appear that humanity's entire defense force had just fled in terror, leaving Earth protected by nothing but its automated defense systems. The trap was set. The Crixian fleet accelerated toward Earth, their massive ships cutting through space with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Their sensors showed exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a civilization on the brink of surrender, its military forces retreating in disarray. What they couldn't see were the thousands of stealth drones scattered throughout the asteroid belt, each carrying a payload of dark matter warheads. They didn't detect the quantum-entangled mines seeded along their approach vector, each one capable of creating a localized space-time distortion that would tear their ships apart. And most importantly, they had no idea that every piece of stolen human technology they'd acquired over the past 5 years had been purposefully designed to fail at precisely this moment. Zhang touched the old metal pendant hanging at her neck, a family heirloom containing a fragment of the Great Wall of China. Throughout history, humanity had faced countless would-be conquerors. Each time they had adapted, learned, and emerged stronger. The Crixians were about to learn why challenging humanity was their final mistake. "All ships," she broadcast across the quantum-secured channel, "prepare to execute Phase 2 on my mark. Let's show them why humanity doesn't submit." The Crixian fleet crossed the orbit of Mars, their victory seemingly assured. In less than an hour, they would be in range of Earth. They never saw it coming. "Crixian fleet has passed the final warning marker, Admiral," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "They're transmitting their victory speeches already." Admiral Zhang allowed herself a moment of dark amusement. The Crixian Supreme Commander was broadcasting across all frequencies, describing in elaborate detail how Earth would become the newest jewel in their empire, how humanity would finally learn its proper place in the galaxy. "They're so proud of their neural network technology," Zhang mused, watching the enemy fleet's formation on the holographic display. "Letting all their ships think and act as one almost seems a shame to use it against them." She paused, then added quietly, "Almost." The Crixian fleet had arranged itself into their traditional Spear of Destiny formation, a massive arrowhead of capital ships designed to pierce through any planetary defense. It was an impressive sight, one that had spelled doom for countless civilizations before. But humanity had studied those battles, had learned from each fallen race, had prepared. "Signal from Project Deep Mind, Admiral," Commander Chen announced from his station. "They've finished their analysis of the Crixian neural network protocols. Success rate projected at 98.7%. Zhang nodded. For 2 years, Earth's most advanced AI systems had been studying the Crixian tech, probing for weaknesses. The aliens' greatest strength, their unified neural network, was about to become their greatest vulnerability. "Execute Phase 2, Zhang ordered. "Activate the quantum mines." Across the solar system, thousands of previously invisible quantum mines sparked to life. But instead of detonating, they began broadcasting a carefully crafted signal, one that matched the exact frequency of the Crixian neural network. The effect was instantaneous. Across the enemy fleet, ship after ship suddenly lost control of their navigation systems. The magnificent Spear of Destiny formation began to break apart as vessels pulled in random directions, their AI cores struggling to process the conflicting signals. "By all the stars," Rodriguez whispered, watching the chaos unfold. "It's actually working." "Of course it's working," Zhang replied calmly. "Did you think humanity's quantum computing division spent the last decade playing games?" She allowed herself a small smile. "Well, technically they did. The breakthrough came from a teenager's modified gaming console in Lagos." The Crixian command channels erupted with confusion and anger. Their supposedly unbeatable neural network, the same one they'd used to dominate 37 other species, was being torn apart by what appeared to be primitive human technology. "They're launching fighters," Chen reported, "trying to switch to manual control." "Right on schedule," Zhang nodded. "Deploy the drone swarm." From their hidden positions in the asteroid belt, thousands of stealth drones activated, Each one was barely larger than a human hand, powered by miniaturized fusion cores, another impossible technology humanity had developed in secret. The drones moved like a dark cloud through space, their quantum-entangled processors allowing them to act with perfect coordination. Unlike the Crixian neural network, this system had been designed from the ground up to be unhackable, using principles derived from human neural architecture rather than artificial constructs. As the enemy fighters scrambled to protect their capital ships, the drone swarm engaged. What followed wasn't so much a battle as a dance, a deadly ballet of machines executing maneuvers that would have turned organic pilots to paste. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with excitement. "You're going to want to see this. The Crixian flagship. They're trying to power up their main gun." Zhang's smile grew wider. "Perfect. They're right where we want them. Signal all ships. Execute Phase 3. The real battle was about to begin, and humanity was just getting started. Supreme Commander Vexthor of the Crixian Empire was experiencing something entirely new. Fear. "Impossible!" he roared, his crystalline exoskeleton flickering with patterns of rage and disbelief. "These primitives, they should not!" The bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was in chaos. The neural network that had guided their conquest of the galaxy for centuries was unraveling. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Empire, moved like drugged beasts, ships colliding with each other as their control systems went haywire. And then it got worse. "Multiple spatial distortions detected," his sensor officer screamed. "Energy signatures everywhere, The void erupted with light as 300 human warships materialized around the Crixian fleet. They had been there all along, hidden by technology that the Crixians had dismissed as theoretical impossibility. Aboard the ESS Defiant, Admiral Zhang gave the order that would be remembered in human history books for centuries to come. "All ships, weapons free. Show them what humanity can do." The human fleet opened fire, but not with the primitive kinetic weapons the Crixians had expected. Instead, streams of focused dark matter lanced out, ignoring shields designed to stop conventional energy weapons. Where the beams struck, Crixian ships simply ceased to exist, their very atoms scattered across dimensional boundaries. "Admiral," Rodriguez reported, his voice steady despite the awesome destruction playing out before them. "The enemy is attempting to activate their mass teleporters. They're trying to retreat." Zhang nodded. "Just as the simulations predicted. Commander Chen, activate the dimensional anchors." Across the battlefield, hidden devices came to life, creating a web of localized space-time distortions. The same technology that humanity had developed for their FTL communications now served another purpose. It made conventional Crixian FTL travel impossible. On the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander Vexthor watched in horror as his retreat options vanished. "How?" he demanded of no one in particular. "How did they achieve this level of technology without us noticing?" The answer, had he known it, would have been even more terrifying. Humanity hadn't developed this technology despite Crixian surveillance. They had developed it because of it. Every time the Crixians had sent probe ships or stealth observers, humanity had detected them, studied them, and fed them carefully curated information. "Sir," Commander Chen called out, "we're detecting power spikes from their remaining capital ships. They're diverting all power to weapons." "As expected," Zhang replied. "They always choose to fight to the death rather than surrender. Signal the drone swarms to begin Phase 3B. The clouds of human combat drones, which had been devastating the Crixian fighter screen, suddenly changed formation. They clustered into tight geometric patterns, their quantum processors synchronizing in ways that defied conventional physics. And then they began to sing. It wasn't sound. Sound doesn't travel in space. It was something far more fundamental. a resonance pattern that interfaced directly with the crystalline structure of Kryxian technology. The same crystalline technology that made their ships so powerful, that formed their exoskeletons, that ran through every aspect of their society. Across the Kryxian fleet, crystal began to shatter. "Status report," Zhang commanded, watching the devastation unfold. "Enemy fleet is down to 30% operational capacity," Rodriguez answered. "Their command and control structure is collapsing. We're detecting multiple reactor breaches." Zhang touched her pendant again, thinking of all the generations of human warriors who had come before. "Send the surrender demand. Let's see if they're wise enough to take it." The response came almost immediately. A barrage of antimatter torpedoes launched in desperation. "Well," Zhang sighed, "I suppose that answers that question. All ships execute final attack pattern. Let's finish this." The human fleet moved as one, their formation shifting into something that would have been recognized by naval commanders from centuries past. The crossing of the T. Some military principles, it seemed, were truly universal. The Kryxians were about to learn their final lesson about humanity. We don't just win fights, we make sure they never happen again. The final moments of the Kryxian Empire's greatest fleet played out like a symphony of destruction. Supreme Commander Vexthor, his crystalline form now cracked and dulled, watched helplessly as the supposedly primitive humans systematically dismantled everything he had ever believed in. "My lord," his last functioning sensor officer reported, voice trembling. "We're detecting massive energy buildups from the lunar surface. The readings, they're beyond anything in our database." The moon, Earth's silent guardian, had begun to glow. What the Kryxians had dismissed as simple automated defenses was revealing itself to be something far more terrifying. A planetary-scale weapon system that humanity had built right under their noses. Admiral Zhang's voice carried across all frequencies, a courtesy that felt more like a final twist of the knife. "You should have researched Earth's entertainment media, Commander Vexthor. We've been planning for scenarios like this for centuries. We call it science fiction. It's where we prototype our future." The lunar defense grid powered up fully, its true nature finally revealed. The entire moon was not just a weapon. It was a massive quantum computer, running battle simulations faster than light itself. Every possible move the Kryxians could make had been calculated, countered, and accounted for long before the battle began. "Admiral," Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the awe from his voice, "the LDG is predicting their next 17 probable strategies. All countermeasures are ready." Zhang nodded. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Commander Vexthor," she broadcast again. "It's our imagination, our ability to look at the impossible and say, 'not yet,' instead of 'never.'" The remaining Kryxian ships, desperate and cornered, attempted to scatter in every direction at once. It was exactly what the LDG had predicted they would do. Quantum filaments, invisible until now, activated throughout the battlefield. Space itself seemed to fold, creating corridors of controlled chaos that the human fleet navigated with practiced ease. The Kryxians, their ships already crippled by the crystal resonance attack, found themselves herded like cattle to slaughter. "They're powering up their forbidden weapons," Chen announced, monitoring the enemy's death throes. "Dimensional shredders, reality bombs, everything they've got left." Zhang's expression remained calm. "Execute Protocol Omega. Show them why we let them keep those weapons." Across the battlefield, every forbidden weapon in the Kryxian arsenal began to activate at once, and then turned on their own ships. The Trojan horse that humanity had planted in their weapons systems years ago finally revealed itself. On the Eternal Dominion, Vexthor finally understood. Every technology they had developed, every weapon they had held in reserve, every secret they had kept, humanity had known about them all, had planned for them all, had turned them all into traps. "How long?" he transmitted, his once proud voice now barely a whisper. "How long have you been preparing for this?" Admiral Zhang's response was simple. "Since the first time we looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. We hoped for friends but prepared for enemies. You simply proved us right." The lunar defense grid reached full power. The surface of the moon rippled like liquid mercury as millions of quantum-entangled particles aligned. What happened next would be studied by xenophysicists for generations to come. It wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's declaration to the galaxy. Never again would Earth be threatened. Never again would humanity be underestimated. "All ships," Zhang commanded, her voice steady as ever, "clear the blast radius. Let's show them why this will be their final mistake." The human fleet moved in perfect formation, their quantum drives humming in harmony. Behind them, the moon began to shine with the light of 1,000 suns, ready to deliver the final verdict of humanity's court. The age of Crixian dominance was about to end. The age of humanity was about to begin. Time seemed to slow as the lunar defense grid reached critical alignment. The moon's surface had become a perfect mirror, reflecting not just light, but the very fabric of reality itself. Every crater, every basin, every feature that humans had mapped and memorized over millennia now served a greater purpose. "LDG firing sequence initiated," Commander Chen announced, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. "Quantum containment fields at maximum, reality anchors holding steady." Admiral Zhang stood at the center of her bridge, the weight of human history bearing down on this moment. "Begin the countdown." But Supreme Commander Vexthor had one final card to play. "Wait!" His transmission cut across all frequencies. "You don't understand what you're about to unleash. The prophecies. The Ancient Ones warned of this very moment." Zhang's expression didn't change, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "We know about the Ancient Ones, Commander. We found their ruins on Mars 50 years ago. Did you really think those quantum formulae carved into the Olympus Mons caverns were warnings?" She paused for effect. They were instructions. The revelation hit the Crixian commander like a physical blow. His species had spent centuries decoding fragments of the Ancient Ones' messages, believing them to be warnings about lesser races reaching too far. But humanity had found the source, had understood it completely, had built upon it. "All ships, execute final defensive formations," Zhang commanded. "Activate temporal shields." The human fleet shifted again, forming a complex geometric pattern that seemed to ripple through multiple dimensions at once. Each ship's quantum drives synchronized, creating a protective bubble of warped space-time around Earth and its defenders. The moon began to pulse with a rhythm that matched the beating of every human heart watching the battle. This was no coincidence. The lunar defense grid was partially powered by the collective electromagnetic field of humanity itself, a discovery that had revolutionized energy physics decades ago. "They're trying to self-destruct their remaining ships," Rodriguez reported, "attempting to create a chain reaction that would take us with them." Zhang nodded. "As expected, execute Protocol Prometheus." Across the battlefield, specially designed quantum seeds that had been scattered throughout space began to activate. Each one contained a fraction of the lunar defense grid's power, waiting for this exact moment. As the Crixian ships began their self-destruct sequences, these seeds latched onto their energy signatures, turning their own destructive power into fuel for what was about to come. "LDG at 100%, Chen announced. "All systems aligned. Waiting for your command, Admiral." Zhang touched her pendant one final time, thinking of all the generations of humans who had dreamed of this moment. Not just of victory, but of securing humanity's place among the stars forever. "To all ships," she broadcast, her voice carrying not just across the fleet, but to every human settlement from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. Bear witness. This is the moment humanity steps out of the shadows. She took a deep breath, then gave the command that would reshape the galaxy. Fire. The moon blazed with the light of creation itself. The quantum web connecting every part of the defense grid activated as one, channeling power that defied conventional physics. This wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's mastery over reality itself, proven in a single, devastating moment. The blast wave approached the Crixian fleet, and in their final moments, they finally understood their greatest mistake. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's technology or determination. They had underestimated humanity's capacity to evolve. The wave of quantum energy from the lunar defense grid reached the Crixian fleet in less than a picosecond, but its effects seemed to unfold in slow motion. Space itself appeared to crystallize around each enemy ship, transforming the battlefield into a frozen tableau of light and shadow. Energy cascade stabilized, Commander Chen reported, his voice filled with professional awe. Quantum matrices are holding. The containment field is perfect. On the view screens, the Crixian ships hung suspended in space-time, caught in a web of pure energy that defied the normal laws of physics. Their shields, their weapons, even their vaunted crystal technology, all of it was being systematically deconstructed at the quantum level. By the void, Supreme Commander Vex Thor's final transmission came through, distorted but clear enough to hear his revelation. You weren't just preparing for war, you were preparing to rewrite the rules of existence itself. Final analysis coming in, Rodriguez announced, studying his readings. The LDG didn't just stop their ships, Admiral. It's converting them. The entire Crixian fleet is being transformed at the molecular level. Zhang nodded. This was the true purpose of the lunar defense grid. Not destruction, but transformation. Begin Phase 6. Initiate the quantum reconstruction protocols. Across the battlefield, the frozen Crixian ships began to change. Their crystalline structures, once the pride of their empire, were being systematically reformed into something new. The energy that would have been released by their destruction was instead being channeled, captured, and repurposed. Message incoming from Luna Base, Chen reported. Director Patel says the containment chambers are ready. The AI cores are standing by to receive the transferred consciousness matrices. This was humanity's true victory, not the annihilation of their enemies, but their preservation and transformation. Every Crixian consciousness was being carefully extracted, stored, and prepared for transfer into new forms that would no longer be bound by the crystalline imperatives that had driven their species to conquest. Signal detected from the Kuiper Belt monitoring stations, Rodriguez added. The quantum ripples are being detected by every major civilization in the sector. They're all sending recognition signals. The Arcturus protocols are being activated. Zhang allowed herself a genuine smile. Right on schedule. It seems our neighbors have been waiting for this moment too. The truth was finally emerging. Humanity's preparations hadn't just been about defending Earth. They had been coordinating with other species for decades, building a coalition of civilizations who had all suffered under Crixian dominance. Today's battle wasn't just a demonstration of human power. It was the triggering event for a galactic reformation. Admiral, Chen's voice carried a note of surprise. We're receiving transmission requests from 37 different systems. They're all former Crixian conquests. They're asking for our help. Of course they are, Zhang replied softly. That was always part of the plan. Humanity doesn't just win wars, Lieutenant. We prevent them from happening again. The lunar defense grid's light began to fade, its work complete. Where once had floated a mighty invasion fleet, now hung something else entirely, a field of transformed matter, each particle containing the stored essence of a Crixian warrior, ready to be given a second chance at existence. "Send word to the Sol Council," Zhang commanded. "Tell them Phase 6 is complete. Operation Phoenix can begin." As the human fleet moved to secure the transformed Crixian ships, signals began pouring in from across the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity hadn't just defended itself, it had changed the rules of galactic civilization forever. The last time they challenged humanity, it wasn't just their final mistake. It was their first step toward redemption. In the hours following the activation of the lunar defense grid, the true scope of humanity's victory began to unfold. The Sol system buzzed with activity as ships from dozens of formerly subjugated species arrived through quantum corridors that Earth had secretly established years ago. Admiral Zhang stood in the newly activated Phoenix chamber beneath Luna Base, watching as the first batch of transformed Crixian consciousness matrices were carefully integrated into their new forms. The chamber was a marvel of human ingenuity, a fusion of biological engineering, quantum computing, and technologies reverse-engineered from the Ancient One's archives. "Consciousness transfer at 47% completion," announced Dr. Sarah Chen, the project's lead scientist and Commander Chen's sister. "Neural patterns are stable. The quantum imprints are accepting their new matrices." The chamber itself was a massive spherical structure, its walls lined with bioorganic quantum processors. In the center, suspended in fields of pure energy, the first 1,000 Crixian minds were being carefully awakened in their new bodies, forms that were designed to maintain their individuality while freeing them from the crystalline hive mind that had driven their species to conquest. "Update from the Diplomatic Corps, Admiral," Rodriguez reported, having followed her from the Defiant. "The Arcturus Coalition representatives have arrived. 26 species are requesting immediate conferences." Zhang nodded, watching as the first transformed Crixian opened its eyes, organic eyes, in a partially biological body. The being's expression was one of confusion, then wonder, then understanding. Where am I?" the former Crixian warrior asked, their voice carrying none of the crystalline harmonics that had marked their previous form. "I feel different, free." "Welcome to your second chance," Zhang replied softly. "Your people's transformation will take time, but you're the first step toward a new future." Screens around the chamber displayed real-time updates from across the galaxy. The quantum ripples from the lunar defense grid's activation had done more than just transform the Crixian fleet. They had triggered dormant technologies that humanity had seeded throughout known space, beginning a cascade of changes that would reshape galactic civilization. "Message from the Sol Council, Admiral," Rodriguez interjected. "The Prometheus protocols have been activated in all 37 former Crixian territories. The quantum transformation network is operational. We are ready to begin the grand transformation." This was humanity's true masterstroke. The battle hadn't just been about defeating the Crixians. It had been about creating the conditions for a fundamental change in how spacefaring civilizations would interact. The quantum transformation network would ensure that no species could ever again be enslaved by technological or biological imperatives. Director Patel reports that the first batch of transformed Crixians is ready for orientation, Dr. Chen announced. Their neural patterns show complete liberation from the crystal protocols, but their memories and individual personalities remain intact. Zhang approached the first transformed Crixian, who was now standing steadily in their new form. "Do you understand what has happened?" The being nodded slowly. You didn't destroy us. You freed us. The crystal consciousness, the driving need to conquer and absorb, it's gone." They looked at their new hands in wonder. We never knew we were prisoners in our own minds. Around them, more transformed Crixians were awakening, each coming to the same realization. The chamber hummed with the energy of newfound consciousness, of beings experiencing true individual thought for the first time in their species' history. "Admiral," Rodriguez called out urgently, "we're receiving a priority transmission. The Arcturus Coalition. They're requesting the transformation technology. They want to transform their own societies, prevent any future species from falling into the same patterns of conquest and dominance." Zhang smiled. This too had been part of the plan. Humanity hadn't just created a weapon or a defense system. They had created a path to genuine galactic peace. "Tell them," she commanded, "that Operation Phoenix is just the beginning. The age of conquest is over. The age of transformation has begun." As if in response, the quantum networks pulsed with energy, carrying the promise of change to every corner of known space. The last time they had challenged humanity, they hadn't just made their final mistake. They had unknowingly taken their first step toward universal enlightenment. As the first wave of transformed Crixians awoke in their new bodies, the weight of history settled upon Admiral Zhang's shoulders. Humanity had not just won a war, it had redefined the very concept of conflict. No longer would civilization be built upon conquest and subjugation. The transformation protocols had proven that war itself could be rewritten, turned into a process of renewal rather than destruction. The chamber pulsed with soft quantum light as the Crixians, now freed from the hive mind, took their first independent steps. Zhang met the gaze of the first transformed warrior, once Supreme Commander Vexthor. His crystalline body was gone, replaced by a hybrid form that blended Crixian resilience with human adaptability. "I can hear my own thoughts," he whispered, voice unsteady. "I was never alone before. Now I am me." Zhang nodded. "That is the gift we offer. Not destruction, but freedom. Every being should have the right to choose their own path." The former Crixian commander studied his hands, clenching them into fists before releasing them. "I spent my life believing in the strength of my empire, but now I see it was never strength. It was a cage." He exhaled slowly, as if experiencing the sensation for the first time. "And you opened the door." Zhang allowed herself a rare smile. "Walk through it." A notification pulsed on her neural display. New transmissions flooded in from across the galaxy. The quantum shockwaves from the lunar defense grid had triggered dormant technologies placed across Crixian-occupied worlds. Reports confirmed that transformation hubs were activating everywhere, offering the same rebirth to trillions who had once been bound by the crystalline hive mind. Rodriguez stepped forward, face alight with excitement. "Admiral, the Arcturus Coalition has just declared the official dissolution of the Crixian Empire. They're asking us to oversee the restructuring process and to provide the transformation protocols to any willing species. Humanity is no longer just defending itself," Dr. Sarah Chen added. "We're leading the next step in galactic evolution." Zhang turned to the massive display showing the Sol system. Earth shone like a beacon of hope, and beyond it, the moon, the heart of this revolution, hummed with residual quantum energy. A symbol, now, of what was possible when imagination triumphed over destruction. The Crixians had once called themselves the eternal dominion of the stars. Now, they were something new, something better. She took a breath and addressed the fleet. "To all of humanity, to all of our allies, today is the dawn of a new era. The age of conquest is over. The age of transformation has begun." A pause. Then, across every ship, every outpost, every colony, cheers erupted. A species that had once gazed up at the stars in fear and wonder had just claimed its place among them, not as conquerors, but as architects of a brighter future. As Zhang turned back to Vexthor, the former commander straightened. "What happens to us now?" "You help rebuild," she said simply. "You and every transformed Kryxian will have a choice: to remain in your new forms and find your own way, or to help undo the damage your empire caused. Either way, your past does not define your future. Only you do." He considered this for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "Then let my first act as a free being be this. I will help. Not as a commander, but as someone who must atone." She extended a hand. After a moment's hesitation, he took it. The transformation was complete, not just in body, but in spirit. Across the galaxy, the ripples of this moment spread outward. What had begun as a war had ended as something far greater. The Kryxian Empire had fallen, but in its place, something new was rising. Humanity had looked up at the stars and wondered. Now, it was their turn to guide others toward that same wonder. And as the lunar defense grid dimmed, its purpose fulfilled, the galaxy turned its gaze toward Sul,